Okay, so really, I wrote a book in 2015 called Uncover the Hidden Job Market, and it is for senior executives and board directors who are currently in their job search process. But the things that I talk about in the book are equally applicable for more junior employees or people chasing consulting work, part-time work, um, interim work. So even if what I say doesn't exactly pertain to your situation, what you can feel confident of is that the majority of what I talk about is still very applicable. And so what today's sort of primary focus of attention on is, what are you doing in terms of building your unique selling proposition or your employee value proposition? Because that's so important, isn't it? Especially as we become more experienced and we grow in our career and we're competing for more senior roles. We have to be able to clearly communicate and articulate those key achievements and transferable skills that are going to get the attention of employers and recruiters alike. And so the two primary tools that are predominantly used by people are firstly their CV and then their LinkedIn profile. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a chat about that, and then we'll move on and we'll see where the conversation goes. So if I was to make a general comment, and it's interesting, I write in my second book, Winning the War for Talent, which is aimed at the employer. Most people's LinkedIn profiles are really just a summary of their career. So it might be that it's just Richard Triggs, owner and CEO of Arate Executive, and then my career, historically working backwards, some points on education and so on. But it's not very sexy. If I was a candidate and I was wanting people to approach me directly or to take notice of me when I approach them, I need to put things into my LinkedIn profile which are very attractive. And so those things are my responsibilities and, more importantly, my key achievements in my various roles. And largely, if you have already done this in your CV, then you can simply cut and paste that across into your LinkedIn profile. And largely, it doesn't require much in the way of editing at all. Of course, if you're working for companies and they're a private company and you can't disclose exact figures, like I rose the revenue from 1.7 million to $4.3 million, if you feel that that's a breach of their confidentiality, then what you could say would be something like, I grew revenue by 347% or whatever it is, in a 3-year period. That is a way of essentially passing the same information, but in such a way that you're not breaching confidentiality. A lot of people confuse their responsibilities with their achievements. So, for example, somebody might say, well, one of my achievements was I managed a team of 10 people or 100 people or whatever number it is. Well, that's not really an achievement. That's a responsibility, because the reality is you might have managed them, but you might have managed them very poorly. So the kind of things that I talk about when you're talking about your key achievements are, I grew revenue by X, I reduced expenses by Y, I improved lost time work injury rates by Z, I increased market share by etc. As you can see, the examples I'm giving are very quantified. That is what is sexy. Employers want to employ people who've done it before, they've done it well, and they're motivated to do it again. And so the more that you can show that you've achieved great outcomes for your companies that you've worked for, the more employers will be excited about you. And then also, if you don't have the exact skills for the role that you're looking at, if they can see that you're a real go-getter and a big achiever, then they're more likely to take a risk on engaging with you because of the other things that you've done in your career. So I have not only in my book, but I also have a free webinar session. One webinar is on your career collateral, which is your CV and your LinkedIn profile. One webinar is on how best to work with recruiters, and the other webinar is on how to access the hidden job market, which is really the one drum that I've been banging. It feels like forever now, probably for well over 10 years. As I say, I wrote my book in 2015, second edition in 2023. And if you don't have those tools, the book and the webinars and so on, all you need to do is to go to the Arate Executive website, and you can put in your details and you can get them all for free. So everybody who's attending today, in fact, everybody at all who would like that information, can jump online and can get that directly. If for whatever reason you can't find it, or you're not exactly sure where to look, then just send an email to info@arateexecutive.com.au and we can send you that information back. Okay, I'm just going to switch screens now and see if anybody's asked me a question yet. One at the moment. Okay, cool. We have a question. We have a few questions. Okay, so all right. So Soren has written, how do you hunt for a job that officially doesn't exist, or that only now C-level executives are beginning to understand? So I'm assuming, Soren, by that question, what you're saying is that you may be wanting to bring a new skill set or a new opportunity to an organization that they haven't previously considered. And so you're trying to invent essentially a unique role for yourself, rather than relying on the traditional CEO, CIO, CEO, COO, CPO, et cetera. So if I have misunderstood that, then please, make a follow-up. But essentially, when you're a person that's got a fairly unique skill set, and Soren, I know that you do, you will be seeing that there will not be a lot of organizations going down a traditional recruitment pathway to hire those roles. People ask me about all kinds of interesting career titles, and it's interesting that when we look up on LinkedIn using a tool called LinkedIn Recruiter, how many people in Australia might have that title. And I'm trying to think of an example. I'm making this one up completely because I can't think of it. There might be Chief Market Influencer. So somebody says, how many people have got the title Chief Market Influencer in Australia? Well, I would suggest very, very few. And yet, how many companies want to influence their market? So my suggestion, which I've again been talking about for a long, long time, is by going directly to your employers of choice, looking at an organization that you're attracted to and seeing who in that organization would your role most likely report through to. If it's the CEO, then you would approach the CEO. If it's the CIO, you'd approach the CIO, etc. If you're a mid-careerist finance person, it'd probably be the CFO. So it's identifying your employer of choice and then looking within that organization, either using company websites or LinkedIn, to find the person that your role would most likely report to, and reaching out to them, connecting with them on LinkedIn, and asking them for 15 minutes of their time. And so to preempt a little bit, perhaps, of some further parts of this conversation. So let's say you're looking for a C-suite role, and it's a role that the organization doesn't yet appear to have in their C-suite, as either they've shown their leadership team on their website, or as far as you've been able to find out on LinkedIn. So you approach the CEO, and instead of saying, "Do you have a job?" because they only can answer yes or no, or most likely push you to HR, and you shouldn't be talking to HR at this point, especially if you're talking about this unique new job, because HR people are typically very tactically orientated as to what are the current roles that we're recruiting. Does this person suit these roles? No, they don't. Politely, thanks, but get lost. Whereas the senior executive who's in looking after the role function, they have more of a strategic orientation. They're thinking about the goals that they want to achieve, and they're thinking about their human capital requirements in the near future and beyond. And once you get talking to these people, you then have the ability to ask them. So let's say you're reaching out to Mary, and Mary's the CIO, and you say to Mary, at the moment, what's the pebble in your shoe? What's keeping you awake at night? And she says, oh, Soren, we've got this challenge with this project, or we want to launch this new initiative, or whatever it might be. Then you have the ability then to say to her, well, if I could solve that for you, would that be valuable? And at which point she will probably say, if you could solve that problem for me, that would be fantastic. In which case you say, well, let me tell you when I've done it before. And that is your opportunity to hang your key achievements and your transferable skills on that hook, which gives you the opportunity to best demonstrate to her how you can solve her problems and take away her pain. Yes, excuse me. In a big day of talking. In your situation, though, it may be that when you're talking to the CEO or the CIO or whoever the person is, you might want to present a situation to them where you say, have you considered X about your business and the implications of X on your organization now and in the future? Are you interested in X? Would you be interested in me sharing with you my experience about X? So, and once you pique their curiosity, then you can talk to them about, this skill set that you could bring to their business, which might be something that they haven't previously considered before. And so probably, a great example of that would be the fact that I'm not sure how many years ago now, 2 or perhaps 3 years ago, but certainly not 5 years ago, there were no such thing as Chat GPT prompt experts. And yet now that is a very fastly growing career where people who are very good at it are paid excellent money. And yet 3 years ago, again, I'm not an IT person, so I don't know whether 3 years or maybe it was 5 or whenever it was, Chat GPT didn't even exist. And even today, one of my team members showed me something on Chat GPT that was absolutely blew my mind in terms of how it can help our business. So simple, and all it came down to was putting in the right prompt. So I think, going back to your question, so let's repeat the question. How do you hunt for a job that doesn't exist or that only now C-level executives are beginning to understand? Well, the responsibility is on you to educate them on the benefits of bringing that job into their business, especially if it is at such a cutting edge stage that it is not widely understood and known about within the traditional recruitment market. So I hope that answers your question. Let me just see. Oh, yes, you've come back and said, yes, you were right. So that's good. I like being right. But now that I've answered you, Soren, if you want to ask a follow-up question about that, again, feel free to. Okay, anonymous attendee. Is it possible to get a job in New Zealand or Australia for someone with 35 years of IT, IoT, digital transformation data center projects, including 15 years work experience in Singapore? So, anonymous attendee, I mean, I chuckle because of course it is. I mean, if you have 35 years experience, including international experience, having worked in 3 countries, then you are a hot candidate, my friend. And uh, people want to hire, again, people want to hire somebody who's done it before, done it well, and is motivated to do it again. So if I read between the lines, if the question is, am I too old? It's interesting. Organizations, when I first started in recruitment, probably 20 something years ago, age was definitely a factor of consideration. People who were in their sort of mid 50s and older were definitely disadvantaged, especially in less senior roles. And I turning 57 last month. I'm very glad that situation has changed. Now it's highly unlikely that an organisation would discount people on being too old. We've recruited senior executives into roles who are in their 70s, and it is very common that organisations will say to us, look, we think they need to have a minimum amount of experience of whatever it might be to have the credibility to do this. But at the other end of the scale, as long as they have enough petrol in the tank, they're still keen to do an excellent job and they have the right skill set, then we will definitely look at those older applicants. The reality is that the population of Australia is getting older. People are staying in the workforce longer, and a lot of roles that were traditionally filled by younger people just don't want to do anymore. So to give you an example, again, I'm not an accountant and I don't recruit accountants. We recruit finance people for organisations, CFOs, finance managers, etc. But we don't recruit professional accountants for accounting firms. But I'm friends with owners and senior leaders within accounting practices, and they said that basically the number of younger people wanting to do an accounting degree has completely fallen off a cliff. Younger people just don't want to do it, or at least the majority of those that used to now no longer want to. So that means that they have to look at employing older people into roles. Excuse my dog barking in the background there. If they want to maintain, a good workforce and in fact a competitive advantage in the workplace. We are in our mid 50s, as I am, and probably you are if you've done 35 years experience. We're a lot healthier and generally have a lot more capacity than perhaps people 2 generations ago. And that's only going to improve. So if your question is related to something other than am I too old, again, maybe feel free to elaborate on your question, but if I've answered it correctly, then that's good. Okay, now, either the same or a different anonymous attendee, what patterns are emerging in how SaaS companies are building out their executive teams? Okay, I'm not an IT recruitment specialist. So I understand SaaS stands for service as a software as a service. I think that's what it stands for. But beyond that, that's pretty much the limit of my knowledge about SaaS, I'm sorry to say. You'd probably be better to ask that of an IT specialist, and depending on where you are in Australia, the one IT recruitment company that I highly recommend, they're great friends of mine, is Lime Recruitment, and Paul Benalisha and Cassandra Manthe, both absolute experts in IT recruitment. I would be having a chat to them. But in general, what I would say, companies are wanting people who are excellent to come in and do excellent things. And so executive teams typically would be made up of, if you're talking about executive leadership teams, finance, IT, operations, marketing, HR, strategy, and some other things. I'm sure that there would be very senior roles for SaaS specialists, but unfortunately, I can't really answer that one anymore. I'm sorry about that. My good friend Nikki, what do you do if you reach out to these senior people and they don't respond? Okay, so I'm assuming again from that question you're talking about, I find somebody on LinkedIn, I reach out to them and ask them for a 15-minute meeting, but I don't hear back from them. Well, the reality is, firstly, I don't know how many emails I get a day or a week, but it would be in the hundreds. And so I don't check my emails, or at least I very rarely do. And so that email could be sitting there for a day, or it could be sitting there for 2 weeks. And unless I actually go to LinkedIn because I happen to have some free time and check those messages, I don't often respond to people. So what you need to do is you need to email them rather than in-mail them. If somebody connects with you, so when you reach out and connect with them, they become a first degree of connection. They become a first degree connection. If they've made their email address available to their first degree connections, then you've got their email address. I used to think that if it's their private email, you shouldn't really email them at their private email. But then I've had a change of thought about that. And if that's the email that they've chosen to promote, for want of a better word, term, then why not just use their private email address? So if it's richard.triggs@hotmail.com, which is not my private email, by the way, but if that's what, when you join, you become a first degree connection of mine, then because I've allowed you to see my private email, then you should be quite within your rights to email them there. The other way to do it, though, is to use a Chrome plugin that is called, let me just have a look to make sure I get the name correct. It is called Email Hunter. And if you have this plugin, then typically what you can do is by looking at the company website, not the person's LinkedIn profile, but the company's website, you can see what their email protocol is. So for example, if you were trying to find my email address, and so you went to the Arate executive website and used Email Hunter, which is a totally free product, they will try and sell you a more expensive subscription, but you don't need that. And again, this is all in my book and all in my webinars. So if I'm glossing over some of these things, you'll easily be able to find this information. But you'll be able to, so again, you go to the Arate executive website and you look at what the email protocols are, you'll see it's Sarah L and Yolana B and Michelle M. And so therefore it would be pretty reasonable to assume that mine is Richard T at arateexecutive.com.au. And so that works 98, 99% of the time. And of course, if you can't discover their email address that way, then you can always ring Switchboard and get their email address, hopefully. I used to suggest that you would say in your email, firstly, will you help me please? Not do you have a job, but instead, will you help me please? Most people love to help people. I'm just thinking about my next career move. I'd really appreciate it if I could have 15 minutes of your time on either Zoom or Teams to introduce myself. I'd love to get your advice about the market and where you think the right opportunities may be for me. Again, you haven't asked for a job, you've asked for their advice. Most people love to give advice. Most people love to give back. And if this person looks at your LinkedIn profile and they can see that you're credible and relevant, then they should want to meet with you. Because after all, what is the constant talk in the market? There's a war for talent. We can't find good people. So if you've directly approached them and they look at your LinkedIn profile and it clearly articulates your key achievements and transferable skills, and you've asked for their advice, then the likelihood is you will get a meeting. But it is a numbers game. People are busy. They're up to their neck in crocodiles, as we like to say in Australia. They might be on holidays. They might be distracted. And so what I suggest to people is to just take an hour a day, Monday to Friday, 1 hour a day, and identify 3 employers of choice. I identify the 3 key decision makers, send them 3 LinkedIn connections, and send 3 emails. So 3 a day, 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 15 a week. That should get you, in my experience of having coached people through this process for years and years, 2 to 3 meetings a week. You're not going to get a meeting with everybody. And the reality is that's life. So if you are getting 2 to 3 of these meetings a week and you do that consistently and proactively for 12 weeks, I pretty much guarantee you that you will have found a new job. And of course, if you send an email to somebody and they don't respond, then a couple of days later, 3 days later, you send an email. Look, I'm still really keen to chat to you. I understand you might be too busy, so if I don't hear from you in a month, I'll give you another try. And a month goes by and you give them another try. And if you don't hear from them, you send them another email. Look, if I don't hear from you in a month, I'll give you another try. And by the 3rd month, they're thinking, oh my God, if I don't talk to this Nikki, she's never going to leave me alone. Plus, you've proven that you've been assertive without being aggressive, and you've followed through on your promise to follow each month. And so I talk about it in my book. In my book, I say that you should ring them. But again, having coached hundreds of people through this process, and when I say coach, I don't talk about coaching. I don't charge people to coach them. I'm talking about more informally coaching. The vast majority of people just have a huge reluctance to pick up the phone. But certainly sending an email and saying, if I don't hear from you within 2 to 3 days, I'm going to give you a call, and then you just call them. At the end of the day, if you're not getting 2 to 3 meetings a week, then you're either messaging the wrong people or you are sending the wrong message. I'm just going to shut my door because of my silly dog. Hang on. There we go. Sorry about that. They love chatting to the other dogs as they're walking on by. So, Nikki, coming back to your question, it's all about perseverance, and it's about being a little bit thick-skinned and saying that, well, if they don't want to talk to me, it's really their loss. I suppose it's a little bit like being in the dating game, isn't it? If you're a great person and somebody that you like doesn't really like you, then it's their loss. So it's just about maintaining a momentum. If you're unemployed and you're desperately seeking a new job because you can't pay your mortgage next week, I'd be telling people to do 10 a day, 20 a day. On the other hand, I worked with somebody a little while ago who was the CEO of a substantial bank, and he was not under any threat of losing his job, but he had decided that it was probably time for a change within the next year. He was very selective about who he reached out to, and he might have only reached out to one person a week, but it's just about consistency and about proactivity. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Are there any special visas, anonymous attendee as well, assume again, the same one. Are there any special visas for foreigners to enter Australia, New Zealand now with more than 35 years experience in IT? Please elaborate. Once again, I'm not an IT specialist. However, breaking news, we have now partnered with a lady named Louise, and she owns an immigration law practice. So she is a member of the Arate team. And so obviously, because I don't know who you are, anonymous attendee, what I'd recommend that you do, send an email to info@arateexecutive.com.au, and I will ask her to call you, because she will be able to give you that information that I'm not familiar with. Okay, Julia, I suspect a job is coming up soon at a company I want to work at. How best do I approach the early before the job is advertised? Okay, well, that's it. Basically, Julia, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So find out who the hiring manager is, get in front of them through the tools or techniques that I've just been talking about, and then ask them. You could ask them as directly as, do you have any upcoming vacancies that you think might suit me? But the better way, I think, is to ask, what is the pebble in your shoe? What's keeping you awake at night? And they will probably talk about issues pertaining to this job. Or you may even go so far as to say, I'm aware that you may be recruiting this job, and I'd be interested to understand whether you think that I would be a suitable candidate. But you don't put that in your original email, because that is, it's too much. Your first email is, will you help me please? I'd love some advice. Recruiters are lazy and stupid. Recruiters only want to put square pegs in square holes, get paid, and move on to the next role. Recruiters are not incentivized to put round pegs in square holes. So if you wait for the job to come to the market, and there are, for example, 200 applicants, and you are not one of the 10 squarest pegs for that square hole, then your application probably won't get considered, and you'll get the dreaded thanks but no thanks email. Recruiters are good at putting people into what I call same job, same industry. I'm a CFO, I work for a mining company, I'm looking for another CFO job with another mining company. But if you're looking at different job, same industry, or same job, different industry, or especially different job, different industry, very difficult to get that job through a recruiter. Much easier to get that job by directly approaching the line manager before they know that they need you. Now, the only, I suppose, caveat that I would put on this is it depends where you got that information from. So if, for example, I, as a recruiter, said to you, I have a job coming up that I think that you would be suitable for, then I'm obviously keeping you front of mind, and I'm proactively looking for opportunities to place you. So that's why I'm not saying don't talk to recruiters or don't apply for ads. You should definitely still do that. It's just that that is not what you should only do. Okay, so still talk to recruiters. Try and find 3, 4, 5 recruiters that and more importantly, they know you. They know the kind of job you're looking for. They know your key achievements. They know your transferable skills. They know how best to position you because I can tell you during my career, countless examples of where I've said to a client who's briefed me on a role, look, I think I know the perfect candidate for this role. Why don't you interview them first? If you like them, hire them. If you don't, then we can go to the market. Because the reality is, employers just want the best person. They don't want a protracted, expensive recruitment process. They just want to get the right person in the role and get on with it. So you need employers to get you. Now, there's no point in, if you're an IT person, like our anonymous attendee, wanting to build a relationship with me, for example, because I don't recruit IT. Okay. I could count on one hand the number of CIOs I've recruited in my 16 years. So you need to find the recruiters that specialize in doing the roles that you're attracted to. How do you find those people? You look at roles that are being advertised that you're attracted to, and you see if the recruiter's name is Mary Smith, then you want to have a relationship with Mary Smith, because if she's done or is doing that role, will be recruiting more roles like that, most likely. So you want to be front of mind with her. One of the things I talk about in my book is that, going back to the example, let's say I'm recruiting a CEO, there are 200 applications, 10 people are shortlisted for interview, the other 190 people get an email, thanks for your application. Unfortunately, in this instance, there have been better qualified candidates. So therefore, good luck with your job search, blah, blah. But thanks, but no thanks. Of those 190 people, how many people do you think ring me and ask for feedback as to why they haven't been considered? In almost all cases, it is zero. And that, in my mind, is ridiculous. If you know that there's a recruiter that is recruiting the roles that you like, and they send you a thanks but no thanks, it's an awesome opportunity to build a relationship with them by calling them. Oh, Fred, I see that you've TNT me. You wouldn't use that word. It's our industry lingo. I see that I've been rejected for this opportunity. I'd love to get some feedback. I'd love it to have a 15-minute Zoom or Teams meeting with you, and basically talk about how you might be able to help me. Because don't remember, if a recruiter places you and you're a senior executive, they make a lot of money. So it is in their interest to treat you well. And the reality is, especially at the executive level, every candidate today is a potential future client, and vice versa. And yet it amazes me how poorly organisations, a lot of recruitment organisations, treat their applicants. It's very short-sighted, and it surprises me that they don't have a better worldview, should we say, on how to build a successful recruitment practice. I've just recalled, I said earlier, I used to say, and then I went on to talk about my email, can you help me please, blah, blah. I used to say, can I buy you a cup of coffee? No, I don't say that anymore. I mean, the reality is I don't have cups of coffee anymore. I have Zoom or team meetings. So it used to be that I might have 10 coffee meetings in a week. Now I might have 10 Zoom team meetings in a day. So if you're putting an impost on them, well, by the time I go to the coffee shop, that's 40 minutes, and then I've got to spend an hour with this person, and then I get back to the office, that's going to take 2.5 hours out of my day. It's a very different proposition to, can I have 15 minutes of your time? So the messaging has changed now from, can I buy you a coffee, to, can I have a 15-minute Zoom conversation? And the take up of that is much, much higher, because you're being respectful of the person's time and other responsibilities. Okay, Sunny. Hi, Richard. I've worked in government and private companies, so I find it hard to target a particular company. Any suggestions? This is a question that I get asked a lot. And a lot of people, I call it paralysis by analysis. They think, oh, okay, I understand what Richard's talking about. I need to reach out and to these companies. So I'm going to build a list of 200 companies and then I'll start. And I said, don't do that. Just start with three. Just three, and then the next day another three, and then the next day another three, and then the next day another three. And what you're doing is you're training your brain, it's called the reticular activating system, to start to see opportunities in the marketplace. So you might find it a bit hard at the beginning to think of three a day, but soon you'll find that these names are just appearing because you'll be talking to a friend at a barbecue or reading the newspaper or seeing an ad on a bus, driving past the street, and you go, oh, I haven't thought about them. They could be an employer of choice. Another way you can do it is look at companies that you're attracted to and look at the person in the role that you're attracted to and where they worked previously. And so you might go, oh, I hadn't thought about that company. Another great way to do it is to get lists. So you can get a list of the Australian top 500 ASX companies, the Australian top 500 private companies. You can go to industry associations, like, for example, the Queensland Resources Council, and it will have on their website all of their members, other industry associations, etc. There's all different ways to identify employers of choice, as well as when you're actually talking to an employer of choice, you say to them, who else do you think that I should speak to? And they say, oh, what have you thought about XYZ company? I think that I know their marketing manager and I think they have a marketing role coming up. So the activity, it's just activity will build on itself. It's a little bit like being Sherlock Holmes. You're following the clues, and that's how you continue to identify and refine your employer of choice list. Because you might go to an organization thinking they're an employer of choice, but then when you have a conversation with the hiring manager, think this is actually not really a company that I'd like to work for. So it's as much about saying no as it is saying yes. Okay, all right. Questions keep coming. Can foreigners enter Australia, New Zealand on a visit visa and then search for jobs there? Once again, anonymous attendee, send through that email to info@Arate and I will organise for Louise to talk to you because it's outside of my area of expertise. But certainly from my experience, a lot of foreigners come into Australia, look for a job, and then they get their new employer to sponsor them. But what exactly the sponsorship arrangements are and how they work now, they used to be called 457 visas. I think they're called something different now. Louise would be the best person for you to speak to about that. John, my wife and I constantly debate the use of open to work and a specific open to work post on LinkedIn. I'm conscious of managing my professional brand and have concerns that this may adversely impact my long-term brand. Do you have a view on open to work? Well, of course, if you're currently working and you change your brand to, you put the little logo around your picture that says open to work or whatever it says, then your employer may not find that too exciting. So if you're confidentially searching for a new job whilst in a job, I would certainly not suggest that you do that. But if you're not working and you are looking for a new job, then I would say, of course you would do it. Because if a recruiter or an employer can see that you are open for work, then they know that you're going to be more receptive to their opportunity. And then, of course, when you find your new job, if you have that there, in terms of affecting your longer term brand, you just remove it. So it's there to serve a purpose. It's there to allow recruiters and employers to know who is actually a job seeker. So I don't know who I'm siding with there. whether it's you or your wife, but whoever is saying open to work, I think definitely if you are currently unemployed or underemployed, you should do that. If you write a post on open to work, I give an example in my book of a guy who was made redundant, and so he sent an email to his 350 odd connections saying, look, I'm currently looking for a full-time job, but in the meantime, I have these skills, and if I can be of any assistance to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I actually, his email is verbatim in my book. And I think he sent that out to about 350 first degree connections. He was very quickly offered 3 consulting opportunities, and that turned into a full-time job very quickly. So once again, open to work posts are very effective if they're written effectively. So you do not want to appear desperate, and desperate and dateless. I haven't worked for 2.5 years and I'll sweep streets or, walk your dog. I've been frivolous, obviously. But a very targeted and very specific message can be a very, very successful way to create a new job quickly. Okay, Sonny. I did ask for feedback, but they gave me a scripted reply. So, this is again, I wouldn't trust 98% of recruiters to walk my dog. The industry has got a terrible reputation, and quite frankly, deservedly so. But then you think about it, recruitment there's no degree or no qualification, there's no accreditation, there's no barrier to entry. Many recruiters join recruitment without really understanding what the role is, and they treat people very poorly. And so it might be that they don't put their name or phone number on an ad, which I think is absolutely terrible behaviour. If you want the best people to apply for your job, you need to put your name and phone number on the ad. Otherwise, how can good people ring up and ask you questions? Or if somebody writes to you or, takes the time out to apply for a job, at the very least, you should acknowledge their application and then give them timely feedback on the status of their application. And if they ring up and look for feedback, then you should ring them back. And that's essentially the ethos in my business, and I would hope that all of my team are doing that. I personally don't recruit in Arrowtake anymore, although I have just been working on a CEO role because we were too busy, but I might only recruit 1 job a year. But certainly, it doesn't surprise me that they send back scripted replies. They treat candidates like commodities, and I think that those people are the reason that recruitment has got a reputation that is not nearly as professional as being a lawyer or an architect or an accountant or an engineer or another professional service. If they don't treat you well, Sonny, just move on and work with recruiters who do treat you with the respect that you deserve. Okay. Anonymous attendee. Hi, Richard. Are there IT opportunities in senior management roles in Brisbane? Where in New Zealand are the chances of landing an IT job better? Okay, so anonymous attendee, with love in my heart, I don't do IT recruitment. Okay, so are there IT opportunities in senior management roles in Brisbane? Of course. Almost all organisations of a certain size and above will have somebody in charge of their IT. Now, 80% of jobs plus are never ever advertised. They never get to the job market. They never get to a recruiter. They're filled through the hidden job market. So what does that mean? They see somebody who can solve their problems and take away their pain, and they hire them whether they have a vacancy or not. So everything that I've been saying today equally applies whether you're an IT executive, a finance executive, a marketing executive, etc. Where in New Zealand are the chances of landing an IT job better? I live in Brisbane, Australia. We recruit in Australia. I can't give you that information because I have no knowledge of either the IT industry or the recruitment space in New Zealand. So I would be, in your situation, talking to the IT recruiters in New Zealand. The great thing is with LinkedIn, it's very easy to find these people because they all have LinkedIn profiles. And so, doing a search on recruitment consultants in Wellington, or looking at whatever the New Zealand equivalent of Seek is, and seeing who is advertising the IT roles that you're attracted to will help you to work out who are the best people to speak to. But, once again, IT, unfortunately, specifically, is not my gig. Okay, Rebecca. Hi, Richard. I've been intently focused on, and I just realised that we just had 5 o'clock. So if anybody needs to leave, please feel free to, but I will go for as long as I need to answer all of these questions, even if that's another 30 minutes or even another hour. The excitement of my life after this is I have to go to Woolies and buy some new washing powder for my washing machine. So, as long as we finish before 8 o'clock so I can go to Woolies, I'm all good. Okay, back to Rebecca. Hi, Richard. I've been intently focused on the business I'm currently working with and being quite neglectful of my networking. Very common thing that people say. I've resolved to spend more time on this in 2025, as I know this is the best way for me to find a new role. But what would you say are the 3 most important things I should be doing? BTW, the CV and LinkedIn profile are up to date. I'm not very good at 3-letter acronyms. BTW. What does that mean? Rebecca, what's BTW mean? But anyway, what are the most important things you do? Okay. Networking is fantastic. I love networking. I run networking events. I run lunches and dinners and drinks and breakfasts, and I attend a lot of networking events myself, but I'm not networking purely for the sake of networking. In fact, even though it may not sound like it, I'm quite an introverted person. So what am I? I'm an extroverted introvert. And so the idea of going to a networking event and just handing out my business card and shaking hands with people, hi, I'm Richard, what do you do? Fills me with dread. I would rather be at home, reading a good book and patting my dog. What I suggest is that if you are networking, network where the people are going that you want to work for. So if you're wanting to be a board director, UDIA events. If you're wanting to, work in a particular industry, for example, the mining industry, Queensland Resources events. If you work in the property industry, the Property Council events, or the Urban Development Institute events, or the CPA events if you're an accounting person, etc. But networking is good in that you might say to somebody in your network, hi, Bill, I'm starting to look for a new job. If you hear of anything that you think might be suitable for me, please let me know. And of course, in that moment, Bill says, no worries, Rebecca, I definitely will do that. And then he goes about his life, and it's not front of mind for him. He might trip over an opportunity for you, but he's not out there actively trying to find you a new job. So what I'm talking about is very different to networking. It is specifically identifying your employers of choice, identifying the person within that organization and approaching them directly. Now, you might use networking events as a way of helping you to identify who those employers of choice are. So again, you work in the property industry, you go to a property council event and you talk around, you say, look, I live in Melbourne, and who are the development companies with the best reputations for how they treat their staff, or whatever. So you might use those networking opportunities as a way to build general market knowledge. But really, what I'm talking about is that direct approach to the employer, which is where the gold is. Again, having written that book in 2015, but been talking for probably a good few years prior to that about this concept, I've seen hundreds, maybe not thousands, but hundreds and hundreds of people successfully apply this approach and get great jobs quickly. 3 a day, 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 etc., etc., etc. 12 weeks. I've seen people achieve great jobs within 6 weeks, within 4 weeks. So that is the name of the game. And of course, other recruiters don't particularly get excited about me talking about this, because I'm doing recruiters out of a job. But companies are not using recruiters as much as they were anyway. Recruiters are trying to still provide the same service that they did 20 years ago. The recruitment industry has not evolved, and you either evolve or you die. To give you an example, most executive search firms charge upwards of 20-25%. The big end of town global search firms are charging 35 to even 40% of package to recruit a role. We charge 10. Because executive headhunting used to be hard. It used to take a long time to find the people. It used to be hard to engage with the people. And that's why they needed 74 offices in 47 countries and charged these exorbitant fees. Now, quite honestly, we can conduct global searches and find people anywhere in the world, literally within a matter of days. And we can do it far more cheaply than those traditional organizations can. So I think recruiters have got to wake up to the fact that the traditional recruitment industry is dead, and it will never be revived. And if they don't adapt, then they will go the way of the dinosaurs. So, that's why I want to educate you on how to find a job. I'm really paying it forward. I'm building community. I'm wanting to share my knowledge so that when you do find that new job, whether I place you or you find it yourself or whatever, hopefully you'll think kindly about nice old Richard Triggs. And then when a role appears in your organisation and you think, Richard was very helpful. He did these webinars. He sent me a free copy of his book, etc., etc. He invited me to these networking events. You might have a role that you need handed with, and of course that's how we make our money, so I'm investing in my future karma. Julia, thank you, Richard, for your time and response today. I appreciate it. Thank you, Julia, for coming along. Rebecca, BTW, by the way. I thought it was by the way. So you're saying, by the way, the CV and LinkedIn profile are up to date. Well, that's excellent. Of course, you want to have your CV and your LinkedIn profile up to date because you might only get one opportunity to meet with that employer. And unless you're putting your best foot forward, and you might miss out on that opportunity. So before you do anything, CV and LinkedIn up to date and clearly articulating your quantifiable key achievements. You want to sell the sizzle, not the steak. Sonny, will you be running an in-person event in Melbourne sometime soon? Look, we've run some events in Melbourne in the past. with varying degrees of success. I will probably look to run at least one or two events before the end of the year, but currently I don't have anything specific in the diary. But it's great to get down to Melbourne and Sydney. We do a lot of business in Sydney and Melbourne, and get out and what I call shake hands and kiss babies. Anyway, any final queries, questions, concerns, comments? Everybody's been very polite and delightful today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me for a bit over an hour. Good luck with your job search, and let us know about your wins. And as I said again, if you want a free copy of my book and a free copy of my pre-recorded webinars, and don't hesitate to reach out through our LinkedIn or through info@arateexecutive.com.au, and we will send those to you. And of course, if there's anybody on the call who is looking to hire and you're finding any challenges in hiring and you think that we can assist you, we'd love the opportunity to have a chat to you about that as well. So have a fantastic night, and I look forward to remaining in contact in the future. Adios.